Safety Limited, and that's the person of Mr. Olatunji Afoke. Good morning, sir. It's good to have you right here on the show.
Hello, good morning.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let us just dive into the issue proper for today. We're looking at fire incidences and how we can actually stem this particular tide so we don't have occurrences and reoccurrences. First of all, I just want to talk about how come we've been having frequent incidences of fire in Nigeria. Let me start with you, Mr. Dominic.
It is really a pathetic situation in this country. We, as a body, Fire Protection Association of Nigeria, we held conferences and tried to we wrote reports and all that to the government, and yet we have not really seen any much improvement, and that is unfortunate because fire service is actually established everywhere in the world to secure the safety of people and property.
Okay.
Looking at that, in 1980, I think it was, Federal Ministry of Education went up in flames on Moloney Street. In 1981, the public building on Custom Street went up in flames. It was so bad that they had to pull it down completely. It's a 9-story building. To replace that today will be in terms of billions of naira. Nothing was learned from that. In 1983, NECOM, it used to be called NECOM, now NITEC, building, 32-story building on Marina, went up in flames. People died, and there is no amount of money that can be compensated for their lives. Not long ago, apart from other serious fires like La Pal House and all that, and Investment House on Broad Street, NIDB went up in flames. And it was so bad as well that it was decided to pull it down. And the amount of money spent by Lagos State to pull it down was enormous. I heard it was in terms of 1 or 2 billion naira.
Okay, Mr. Dominic, I'll come back to you in a moment. It's Galaxy. Today we're looking at fire incidences in the country. We'll take a quick break and come talk some more with our guest on these particular issues in a moment. Stay with us. Increments in population and urbanization with no commensurate improvement and expansion in public infrastructure have in no small measure contributed to the increase in fire incidents and fire-related fatalities. The safety of lives and properties, especially from avoidable fire accidents, must now occupy a higher place in the risk management priorities of every business. It is therefore very important for all business owners, operators and managers to ensure that they are constantly abreast with all fire safety laws, regulations, codes and industry best practices, all of which have an impact on their investments. This also applies to private homes and individuals. Speaking of fire incidents, the Otedola Bridge fire accident occurred on the Otedola Bridge at the Lagos end of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, where a tanker lorry fully loaded with petroleum product fell, leaked and exploded on the 27th of June 2018. The massive fire at the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway aroused simultaneously after the explosion of the petroleum-fueled tanker lorry, leading to the transfer of flames to other vehicles approaching the lorry on the busy road. The Nigerian Federal Road Safety Corps announced All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Galaxy today. And just before the break, Mr. Aigogo was talking about why we have too many frequent fire incidences in the country. Please, can you continue with your thoughts, sir?
Yes, so in 1989 or so, we made a recommendation that we should have a fire service college. Then it was then fire service at Abuja, Federal Fire Service, was under the Federal Ministry of Works. I think government, we must thank government for doing something about that. So today we have a fire service college at Abuja. But the way it is being run is not, in our own opinion, very good. However, I don't want to go into that now. Okay. It was a very sad thing to find that Abuja, that was created by us, did not have fire hydrants. With what do you expect the fire servicemen to fight fire? You see, we cannot depend only on fire vehicle. Even fire vehicle will require water to replenish. That is one major thing. Fire hydrant must be in all our municipal towns or municipal cities in our country. So with that, fire service is being frustrated.
Okay, sir. I like what you just said, but Mr. Afoke, I like us to look at equipment now. For instance, from what he has said, it looks like there's a whole lot of shortcomings when it comes to fire service in Nigeria. Do you think we have equipment to be able to help us combat fire incidences when they occur?
Thank you. I think before we go into that, we need to come down to the basics. In Nigeria today, particularly in Lagos, with high level of development, it's not on a daily basis again, it's on hourly basis. Fire incidents occurring in the public, you hinge it to lack of compliance attitude and listening ears. Why do I say that? Of all fire incidences that are occurring in the public, majority of them, even about 90%, will start from their incipient stages. That's at their initial stages. And what they need is just a little thing to ensure that you cope with that fire incident before it grew out of proportion that we have to be combat with trained personnel. And what are the compliance attitude and the listening ears? It's just the do's and don'ts. Don't place this here, don't place that here. And a lot of fire incidences, like I have said, before you see a big fire, big conflagration that is high, but they start from their incipient stages. Having said that, when you ask about equipment, yes, I would say we have equipment, but it is definitely not enough.
Okay.
It is not enough.
We have up to standard, as in...
If I said it's not enough, I don't think there is any government even in the world that will say, well, we have arrived, we have it up to standard. But at least you must maintain certain standard that is acceptable world over.
Yeah. But
coming down to Nigeria, where we have various, like the Vice President has said, various states fire services. And that is the other aspect, that when it grew out of proportion, that the fire service will have to be called in, they will need principally and basically two things. Two factors of: one, adequate and appropriate equipment. And secondly, manpower. When I say manpower, you are talking about manpower, skilled manpower. Yeah. It's not just ordinary manpower. And if you say you are having skilled manpower, they must have been trained at the basic level of firefighting and preventive aspects. And secondly, they have to continue to be trained and retrained even by the government. Then you go into area of equipment. If you are talking about equipment, you talk about the adequacy of equipment and the appropriateness of equipment. You can have a lot of equipment, you can have various, numbers of equipment. If they are not appropriate, no matter the level of or number of equipment that you have. So the two must go together. There must be adequate equipment, it must be appropriate equipment, and the people that are going to make use of this equipment has to be trained in what they are supposed to be. So in Nigeria today, I think we still have a lot to do. There are maybe few of the states that have come up, and well, there is nothing bad in you mentioning something that is the truth. Because we are in Lagos here. Lagos state government has been trying and doing the needful in terms of equipment and in terms of manpower. But you ask if we have arrived. I will say we have not arrived.
Okay.
But definitely, I think a lot has been done that needs to say kudos.
Okay, personal fire right now. Looking at what goes on around the world now, specifically if you look at the Americans in California, just not too long ago, they had this ravaging fire, and it's like a norm. It's becoming like a norm in most parts of Americas and Australia, where you just see wildfires springing up. Let us try and relate it now to the Nigeria's context. Sometimes fires happen in the domestic level at the home front and all of that. Sometimes most people don't really understand what to do or why those fires happen. Do you think we have the requisite level of consciousness when it comes to fire safety and fire hazards at the domestic level, Mr. Ibogo?
At domestic level, we have a very serious challenge. For example, take Lagos, for example, where some shops went up in flame. Before the fire service can get there, several shops have been burnt down because of the density, the traffic situation in Lagos, which is why we were calling for at least 4 fire stations per local government. Well, it costs money, but if the political will is there, we can have it. At least a minimum of 2 or 3. So that is one. Then you have a fire service that has challenges of maintaining their equipment. So when equipment are not functional, they can't get to where they need to go. You see? And again, you find that how much is actually devoted for maintenance? What type of training do we have for our local mechanics? When I say local mechanics, those employed in the fire service, because they need to have a workshop. Okay. So those are the basic challenges that is responsible for some of the things we are doing. We, again, Fire Protection Association went to the extent of calling for a common fire code for Nigeria.
Okay.
A lot has been done. It's not adequate. Now, we have been saying that fire safety is a collective responsibility. The federal government wanted to unify fire services. That is not good at all. And so, I don't know, that is in limbo for now. Then secondly, we said there must be common standards in Nigeria, so that what the practice is in Maiduguri should be the same as the practice in Akwa Ibom.
To cut across the board. Yeah.
So that is not on. And the only way we can do that is to have a fire service commission. If we have a fire service commission, like the universities commission, That will help a lot to standardize fire service practice in this country. Wherever it's one country. There is no two Nigeria, whatever. Nigeria is one, although we have federating units. But if we have federating units, then we must establish a system that will establish a standard for fire service.
Okay, sir, but what do you think we should do to enable us prevent and as well as fight fire outbreaks when they happen, either your immediate environment or at a larger scale? Well, what would you advise?
Well, safety awareness comes in here. There must be safety awareness. Everybody, when I said it's a collective responsibility, the individuals have a responsibility in fire prevention. And fire prevention is the best. Prevention is better than cure, they said. You know, so the basic thing is that even at home, every house must have a fire extinguisher. Appropriate fire. Mr. Fuke mentioned appropriate.
When you said appropriate, let me just put in there appropriate. What is appropriate for the home front, for the man at the shop, for an office complex of office building like ours, and then maybe for like a factory? I just want you to be specific.
Well, it depends on what you have in the house. Yeah. But we have what we call general purpose dry powder. Okay. So that is common, it's easy to operate. Everybody should be able to operate it. And I expect that if our fire prevention department of fire service is developed, they can be going around, especially inspecting shops and all that, and seeing that extinguishers are there. They can say, well, when next time around and there's no extinguisher here, you may be penalized, you know, to kind of persuade everybody to have firefighting extinguisher.
Okay. Yes. Okay, I'd like to bring
the fire service then will recommend what is appropriate for that particular house.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'd like to bring a scenario up here. It was a real life issue that happened to a relative of mine who parked his car overnight, only to wake up at about 2 a.m. where bangs on his gate and then realized that his car was aflamed. And they tried using fire extinguisher and it didn't work.
Well, fire service is a security outfit.
Okay.
Really, it's a security outfit. It should have access to every house in a township.
Okay.
All right, it should. But if every fire starts very small, and at that small stage, at the beginning phase of a fire, an extinguisher will extinguish it. So if people living there are aware of how to operate the extinguisher they have, it's not just a showcase and put an extinguisher there so we have extinguisher. We must know how it operates. Okay. So even an adolescent can pick it up and put it out.
Okay, so if we look at past incidences and present incidences, how would you say our fire service operation has been? Would you say there's anything wrong with our fire service in Nigeria?
Well, I think the fire service cannot and will not perform beyond the available resources in terms of equipment and manpower. With adequate equipment, well, when we say adequate, there's no gainsaying the fact that in Nigeria, and particularly here in Lagos and other growing, developing cities, the fire service have been attending to fire incidents. But there will be a thin wall of difference between efficiency and effectiveness. You might be efficient and you may not be effective. And you might be effective, you may not be efficient. Efficiency, we talk in terms of regular, maybe you are there on time, you have the thing and you are able to make sure that you go there. But what about the output, result? So the two has to go together. It must be efficient, it must be effective. Both has to go, and you cannot do that without this equipment and man. The Vice President talked about fire service, and I also mentioned in that they must have been trained. You cannot come into the fire service in the state without being passing through the basic fire training. But it goes further than that. There must be developmental training in terms of even not only professional, but administrative training, managerial training. How will you administer those equipment in you, even if you know what to do with the equipment and you have the equipment with you? You need administrative knowledge and experience to do. I think that is for the government. Now, the fire service, come to the question you have asked. The fire service have been attending, but if you ask me, I think there is still a lot to be done.
Okay, specifically now, looking back, and let's try and round off in time. Yeah. Looking at the incident that happened not so long ago here in Lagos at the Otedola Bridge in Lagos, you know, a lot of people have tried to do an X-ray, a post-mortem of the incident, you know, and some people have said that the response management, you know, of our emergency, you know, officials, specifically that of the fire service and other ones, are not as effective, as untimely when it comes to responding. Do you agree with that? And secondly, you know, how could we have been able to, you know, handle that particular fire incident better, than specifically the Otedola Bridge?
Well, the Otedola Bridge, if you listen to the information, reports, and all the rest of that, the response time by the fire service and other relevant agencies, security and safety agencies, was timely.
In your opinion?
Not in my opinion. I mentioned at the initial stage that of all the fires, about 90% will start from its initial stage, that is at the incipient stage. The 10% of it will come up fire, I mean explosion accompanied with fire almost immediately. And that is what you will term that of Otedola Bridge to be. That is not something that will be generating from the start. It is a fire that comes with explosion almost immediately. If you talk about the response time in that, and response time in fire that started from its initial stage, they call the fire, a lot of damage must have been done. And that Otedola was involved with oil and gas. And the level of destruction within 5 minutes or even 10 minutes will be so devastated that you will want to see and you saw what happened. But again, the fire service, the other agencies, they came there almost as at when they received the message. Then we'll be talking, and again, you see, the other aspect, the secondary aspect is the fire service coming in. What are we talking about? The occurrence of that particular incident. It was an avoidable incident if we have compliance attitude and listening ears. Look at those rickety articulated trucks. They were not supposed to be on the road. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been fire incident. So that is on the preventive aspect of it. But on the suppression and the combat readiness of the fire service, well, if you look at it, I think the reports are there. Except you go for the report that you really want to go for. And on the part of Fire Protection Association of Nigeria, like I said, this is exactly what we've been talking about. We don't want to take one and leave the other. We talk about the public, we talk about the fire service, we talk about the government equipping the fire service, both in terms of equipment and manpower, and the public listening to safety. Any organization that you have about 20 staff, you are supposed to have a standard fire protection arrangement. Fire extinguishers, which will be on the first aid aspect, and again, and all other, other things that has to be there. How many of them do have it? Then the inspectorate area, aspect of the fire service too, has to be intensified. Very important. They have to be intensified, they have to be trained, they have to be effective, they have to be efficient. And if you have adequate, effective, and efficient fire preventive inspectorate division, the fire incident will be reduced to its nearest minimum. And that's exactly what the Fire Protection Association has been talking about.
All right.
All right, Mr. Aibogu, maybe you might want to tell us more about the Fire Protection Association of Nigeria and so far what you've been able to do as regards this issue of fire hazards prevention and sensitization in Nigeria.
Well, we have been trying. We initiated the need to establish a fire service college, which is now operating at Abuja. We also have been advocating for hydrant system in all our municipalities. That is very important, because the fire service has. There is one other thing that is bothering us for now. That when there is an outbreak of fire, a very serious one for that matter, we don't hear the voice of fire service. This is very, very
when
frustrating.
When you don't hear the voice, as in they don't come out to talk.
No. That's not what I'm saying. If you hear any report, it's going to be either from Nasema or Lasema.
Okay.
Very frustrating to the fire service. Because you see, when you look at efficiency, you need to also think about the training, the attitude, and everybody wants to show that he's doing something. And in terms of fire service, the first responder is the fire service. In terms of fighting, the first responder is the fire service. And Lasema, Nasema are supposed to coordinate the activities of all responders. Well, it is not to show that it was Nasema that put out the fire, it was Nasema that does this or does that. So that frustration, we are human beings. It was like when NNPC went up in flame, and a fireman said, "Is it because of 10 naira? I would take risk and die. 10 naira commission allowance, that's human being. Even if allowance is not paid, a fireman is supposed to fight fire. Yeah. All right, take whatever risk he has to take."
All right, Mr. Ugaxi, today we're looking at fire incidences and how we can curb them in Nigeria. We'll take a very quick break and when we'll come back, we'll just wrap up our thoughts in a minute. Stay with us. Increments in population and urbanization with no commensurate improvement and expansion in public infrastructure have in no small measure contributed to the increase in fire incidents and fire-related fatalities. The safety of lives and properties, especially from avoidable fire accidents, must now occupy a higher place in the risk management priorities of every business. It is therefore very important for all business owners, operators and managers to ensure that they are constantly abreast with all fire safety laws, regulations, codes and industry best practices, all of which have an impact on their investments. This also applies to private homes and individuals. Speaking of fire incidents, the Otedola Bridge fire accident occurred on the Otedola Bridge at the Lagos end of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, where a tanker lorry fully loaded with petroleum product fell, leaked and exploded on the 27th of June 2018. The massive fire at the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway aroused simultaneously after the explosion of the petroleum-fueled tanker lorry, leading to the transfer of flames to other vehicles approaching the lorry on the busy road. The Nigerian Federal Road Safety Corps announced on their Twitter account on the night of June 28, 2018 that a total of 9 persons have been confirmed dead as a result of the incident. The Lagos State government reported the number had risen to 12 on July 2, 2018. Recently, the Mendocino Complex fire charred more than 283,000 acres, making it the largest blaze in California's history in terms of Alright, welcome back. It's still Galaxy. Today here we're looking at curbing fire incidences in Nigeria. We have the Vice President Fire Protection Association of Nigeria, Dominic Aigogo, and of course the Public Relations Officer of the same association, Olatunji Afoke. Gentlemen, still looking at fire incidents, and I want us to stay more now at the home front because we still feel a whole lot of sensitization and in education made to be done. When it comes to fire incidences at the home front, I know if you have to fight fire, you have to be sure that you're not even putting your own life at risk when you're trying to save the lives of other people. What do we need to have in mind at home when there are incidences of fire?
Well, thank you. That's a very relevant question, particularly at this point in time. In the homes, residential premises, you should have at least one, but to complement each other, one dry powder related and one carbon dioxide related.
So, sorry, I have to butt in for people who don't really understand.
Okay.
Because how would you know this? Is this something you can readily get available at the market?
Well, you see, they even sell it all about. Okay. They sell it on the road. They sell it about. The best thing for you to do if you want to get the effective one and your standard one, contact the fire service, and that is exactly what the Fire Protection Association of Nigeria is doing. With contact, that's one of the objectives of the fire service, and we will be able to tell you where exactly you can get them. There are some accredited dealers that you can get them. One of dry powder that is in there, one of carbon dioxide. The dry powder, as it has been said, is known to be multi-purpose.
Okay.
Multi-purpose, it goes for electrical, it goes for oil related, it goes for all other things. But because of the particles of the powdery form, it is carbon dioxide that we have as a complement will be very neat. That also is close to multi-purpose extinguisher. Then from there you go to business premises. In cities now, you have cottage industries all over the places. And visit this, even in a residential premises, you have where they are manufacturing pure water, you have where they are manufacturing even drugs and all of that thing. But what we concern ourselves, I think we have other organizations that could continue to regulate all those things. But our main concern in terms of safety, they should have at least one. And all these things we are talking about does not even exclude religious organizations, churches, mosques, and all the rest of them. You find out that this is where you have a population explosion of people. How have they been able to do something in terms of safety that will complement and be comparable to the number of people that have been there? There must be first and foremost firefighting extinguishers, which is on the first stage. Is the human companion, easy to take, and there must be adequate training for the people. Then you go to other premises, maybe larger organizations, the same thing extinguishers, and the fixed installations. When I say fixed installations, these are the things that will be embedded in the structure of the building. They can actuate on their own. They will actuate, they will be raising an alarm, and they will be fighting the fire even when nobody is around. And there must be fire alarm system. And either the fire extinguishers, the fixed installations, the alarm system, they must be regularly serviced and maintained. You can't put a fire extinguisher or all these installations in a place and just leave it. It could be one in an organization where they have a lot of fire extinguishers in there. And there was an incident, and the first extinguisher that somebody picked up was not working. And that could have coped with the situation at the initial stage. It might be because of only one of about 100 extinguishers that you are servicing and making sure that you are maintaining the equipment on regular basis, at least once or twice in a year.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Speaking extensively about curbing fire incidences in Nigeria. Of course, you will agree with me that we cannot talk about all of the issues in just one episode. I'm sure over time we'll bring them back to come talk more about these issues and how we can tackle them head on. We've been speaking with the Vice President, Fire Protection Association of Nigeria, Dominic Aigbogun, joined by the Public Relations Officer of the same,